What is up?
Hey, my friend.
Hey. Welcome to another totally tubular week here at Case Files with Kat.
And to Ashley.
We're doing an 80s.
I forgot my name for a minute. I'm sorry.
Did you? She looked at me like, what are we doing? Is this for real? Are we going?
Sorry, guys. I haven't even been drinking.
I want to know why I can have a problem with this doohickey machine.
That was pretty funny.
Just yell at the wizard to come look at it. He just stands here, looks at it, and it starts to work.
That was pretty. I'm gonna have to say that was pretty funny. As soon as he got down here,
he just stopped for a second, took a breath, and it started working just perfectly fine. So here we are. How's it going?
It's going great.
Yeah.
How's it going over there?
I'm wondering what's happening behind me.
Oh, your cat Socks is eating a box.
Oh, let me. Please hold. Stop. No. You can't. There's no cardboard to do it. No. Here. All right. Okay. Sorry. This is his new thing. To eat boxes.
Oh.
All cardboard. Any cardboard. No cardboard is safe. Seriously, no cardboard. He'll find any kind of cardboard. He's eaten up Louie's little bed on my desk upstairs. Oh, no. There's bite chunks out of it all around. Poor thing. Okay, yeah. So where were we?
We were talking about our days, weeks, whatevs.
Yeah. So mine's okay. Yours is okay.
Mine's been going great.
All right. Awesome. Wow. Hope everyone is also having great days and weeks out there. I hope you're all caught up.
I'm not drinking, but what are you drinking?
Oh, God. I'm drinking a White Claw. I know. I'm drinking a black cherry White Claw. Don't at me.
I increased my serotonin medication, so I'm flying high.
Oh. So that's good. You don't need a beer.
Can I ask a question?
I love that journey for you.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
What I came here to this picture and I love it. I just didn't know why. It's great.
Oh,
I like it.
Is it? What is it? What are you looking at? Describe it.
I'm assuming that it's from your son, and it looks like the plague doctor.
It looks like a plague doctor?
Yeah, you know the plague doctor? Do you not know what I'm talking about? The plague doctor?
Yeah, turn it around again. Oh, so I think it's his Crow King.
If you're unaware, her son draws horror artwork, and it's amazing, and I love it. And I was just curious about this particular piece that's in front of me.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if
you guys can't see it.
I don't know if he drew it for you, but maybe he did. We'll find out when he gets here.
It's okay if he didn't. I was just impressed by it.
My computer just went black, and I'm like, I can't wake it up, and it didn't.
That's wonderful.
That's why my face looked like, I don't know.
That's just our typical face during the show, so I didn't.
It tracks. Just chaos in my face.
Kevin just making an appearance.
He's just that was a sad.
I know.
Yeah, he needs new batteries.
Kevin. Well, he doesn't have ears, so he probably can't hear himself.
If you point at me when you want Kevin to yell,
okay.
I will push the button.
Oh, it's all right.
All right.
Poor
okay,
Kevin
so
no ears.
It's no ears and weak scream. Okay, so I'm just going to get into it.
Yep.
Because it's a doozy.
Okay.
All right. So if you remember the Theresa Ann Bier's story I did from a couple of weeks ago.
I don't think we could forget.
That was just Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Am I right? I mentioned briefly that there were some other potential suspects.
Okay.
Right, in her disappearance. Wesley Howard Shermantine and Loren Joseph Herzog, also known as the Speed Freak Killers.
Oh, okay.
So I hadn't thought to do the story because, well, I had never heard of them. But then when it was also thought to be suspects or the Speed Freak Killers, I was like, well, who the fuck is that? So then I ended up going down a long ass rabbit hole. So here we are. It took a lot of, in the last 2 weeks, I've watched hours of interrogations. I've listened to awesome amounts of podcasts who did really awesome deep dives. Lots of different little documentaries that were made. Just some really cool stuff that, things you didn't know you needed to know about investigations and that kind of thing. It was really neat. So anyway, let me just say this right off the bat. My primary sources of information for tonight's episode, although I have many, many references in the show notes, I did use them all to some extent, but the main ones are, if you would like to join me down my long rabbit hole, one of them is a podcast series called Foul Play, and it's their 3rd season, and they covered this, and it's like a 20-part deep dive into this case in all the little parts that we have questions about when we do, deep dives like this, like, even doing a whole episode on how the police got things wrong, just on that. There was an expert on body language going minute by minute through an interrogation video. And it made it so that when I went back and watched the interrogation video, I was like, oh, he did do that. I'd already seen the interrogation, but I missed all those clues. Then it was interviews by the bounty hunter, Leonard Padilla. I don't know if you've heard of him. He was the one that found Casey Anthony. Oh, right. So he's he's the guy who wears a cowboy hat.
Okay.
And then his partner, Rob Dick. I highly recommend that series. And then there was a documentary, and you can find it on YouTube, called The Speed Freak Killers Born to Kill.
All right.
Question mark. And that's on YouTube. So every link, any YouTube link of all the interrogations, the documentaries, all of that is in the show notes. So
got it.
It's a lot, and I had to take a drink. Okay. So there's also a ton of written stuff. So many, because it's more current day, there is a lot of newspapers and covering it and everything, and it's in California. So there was just a lot. So, all right, let's get started. So as I mentioned, the 2 guys I'm going to talk about tonight are longtime friends. Wesley Howard Shermantine, born February 24th, 1966. And Loren Joseph Herzog, born December 8th, 1965. So Wesley and Loren grew up practically across the street from each other in a little town called Linden, California. And when I say little, just to give you an idea, like in the 2000 census, so you would think that probably more people live there. In the 2000 census, there were a total of 1,103 people.
Oh, wow.
384 households, but only 316 families. So not a lot of people.
Yeah.
Right. Linden was in Northern California, 20 minutes to the east of Stockton.
Okay.
Which is about an hour and 45 minutes from San Francisco.
Okay.
So if you're looking at the map, directly east from San Francisco is going to be Stockton and Linden.
Oh, okay.
But as I mentioned, Theresa Ann Bier's, it's about a 2-hour drive from Fresno, and where she was to have gone missing in the Sierra Nevadas, right? So kind of keeping that in mind.
Got it.
So I'm not gonna go back through the Theresa Ann Bier's case, but I'll just say this. Is it possible that Shermantine and Herzog are also responsible for Theresa's disappearance and probably death? Sure.
It'd be a really weird coincidence that 3 serial killers just happened to be in the woods that day.
So what's his name? Skip. What was his name? Welch.
Yeah.
He wasn't a serial killer.
Well,
he was just, a meth addict who probably did other things. I mean, but there wasn't, anyway, he died, and there's no way of putting this on him anyway. But yes, you would have to go through some hoops to make the connections. I'm not saying it's impossible, because considering meth is such a central focal point in both of their stories.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
I don't know if, and there's no indication that Skip knew Shermantine and Herzog. There's no indication of that. There's no connection. But I don't know, is the meth world that small? They were both dealers, right? And
probably in that kind of small town, I would think they would know each other.
So Linden, yes, was a small town, but still, you're 2 hours from Fresno. Are you going to drive 2 hours to get meth?
I don't know. I don't do meth.
I know. And so Fresno was a bit more populated than Linden. So meth at the time in the 80s was very much like a rural drug.
Okay.
You didn't, you could get Coke in the city and you'd have to make meth in the little towns. So anyway, is it possible? It's possible.
Yeah.
It's not 100% ruled out.
Seems more possible than Bigfoot, but
it seems more possible than Bigfoot. Thank you. 100%. Okay, so back to these guys. As I said, Wesley and Loren lived on the same street since they were kids, but they had two very different family lives. So on the one hand, you have Wesley Shermantine Jr., whose father was Wesley Sr. He was a business owner. He was a home builder, but he also built like commercial buildings. He was very successful at it as well. So he was, so Wesley and his older and younger sisters grew up very solidly upper middle class. Very nice house. His sister Dolly said in an interview in the Speed Freak Killers Born to Kill documentary that they grew up spoiled. She said they had all the toys and gadgets any kid could want at that time. They had horses, dirt bikes, miniature Corvette go-karts, awesome stereo systems. They had little miniature pool table. They had like the game room, that kind of thing. They had it all. So on the outside, it looked really nice. So there was lots of home video footage of their house. You could see that it's nice and big. From the outside, as onlookers, you'd think they had an idyllic life. But this is Case Files with Kat and Ashley. And we all know there must have been a darker side, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because why do we have a show? It's always a darker side. So this successful family was very well known in Linden, but probably for the worst reasons. It was known that you didn't want to get on their bad side. Oh. That's probably not a good reputation to have, but you didn't want to get on their bad side because who knows what would happen to you. And this reputation came honestly. And so it wasn't just rumors. Although the Shermantine kids were all spoiled by Dad and his success, Sue, their mom, was a different story. She was a very violent drinker who abused everyone in the house, but especially her children, especially Wesley. She wasn't easy on any of the kids, but they kind of picked on Wesley a little bit more. So domestic violence just was her thing. That was her thing. She would break broomsticks on her older daughter's back, like the big broomsticks. She, both mom and dad, when they just fucking felt like it or got mad at Wesley, they would shoot at his feet. They would shoot with guns at his feet to make him dance. Dolly said at one point her mom stabbed her with a barbecue fork several times. I'm thinking it's one of those long, 2-prong forks, like when you're cutting the meat or whatever. Yeah. She broke her nose. She shot her.
Oh my
God.
Time.
Mm-hmm. Both of her daughters, she did shoot. So
the husband who spoils them and stuff is just okay with the wife doing all of these things to the children?
Well, he shot at Wesley's feet too.
Weird that he would spoil them, but then also abuse the shit out of them at the same time.
Isn't that like the honeymoon?
I don't know.
Like, I'm going to give you gifts. I'm so sorry. And then I'm going to be, I don't know. Okay. Maybe they're trying to do that whole, like, the cycle of violence.
It's just the front that they want to portray, I guess.
And it's the front they want to portray, yeah. The next little story is a perfect example of Sue's narcissistic immunity. This is a term I used. I learned in one of the documentaries. Narcissistic immunity, meaning she felt entitled to do anything she wanted to if she was hurt or angry because she was superior.
Oh, okay.
All right. So that's like, you made me mad. You wouldn't have been hurt if you hadn't have done that. So it's your fault. And that's like narcissism, that's psychopathy, I think, as well. Yeah. That's just fucked up. So anyway, here's the story. A local man had not paid a bill to Wesley Sr. Okay. That's just, here's your invoice. You're 30 days late. Maybe you get a lawyer. I don't know how long he went without paying, but he didn't pay. So Mrs. Shermantine, Sue, took this man's house out with a bulldozer. She drove the bulldozer over to this man's house, and the blade came within inches of his head while he was laying in bed. She just drove right through his house. He almost died. He was sleeping, and she was just like, anyway, here I go. She took the man's house out. She never got in trouble. No charges were ever made. Can you imagine?
I mean, as a business owner, not a bad. I'm just kidding.
She's all getting ideas over here, guys.
Lots of outstanding invoices.
Wait, have we paid you?
Just kidding. I'm not trying to go to prison.
I mean, could you imagine?
But that's insane that she did not get any kind of trouble. This poor man.
The balls you have to have, or the ovaries in this case, that you would have to have.
And she was driving it herself.
She was driving it herself. Like, I feel like I could just see like
she's so psychotic.
Curlers in her hair with a cigarette hanging out of her mouth. I don't know. I'm just picturing like this weird, just craziness. That's just, I don't know. So she did not get in trouble. So that just reinforces, obviously, her narcissism, emboldening and reinforcing her feeling of superiority. She is just, this is exactly like this. You made me mad. And if you had paid your invoice, I wouldn't have run through your house with a bulldozer. We use that all the time. Lord. So this is what happens with Wesley Jr. over and over again. As we go through the case, there's just not a lot of accountability, and I don't get, this is a really long story, and it's already too long. And so I don't get into each of the times that the police are like, we gotcha. No, we don't, you know? And so he's emboldened each time he's not caught, each time things go. And he's just shown this over and over again as a child. If a child is shown to use anger and violence to deal with problems or to get their way, they are likely to do the same as adults unless they break the cycle. That is just known. We know this about psychology in children now. Like, we just know that. Obviously, he was not shown anything different. So Wesley Jr. had a reputation for being a bully, for being a troublemaker. And he was like mean to teachers even. He was just mean to everybody. And this was the kid you hoped would not notice you when you got on the bus, that you just wanted to be ignored. Because this kid was, someone said he was a, God, what was the word? They used some like innocent, like scoundrel, but it wasn't the word. Like, he was scrappy. That's not the word. It starts with an S. I'll think of it later, but it was like, that's not an appropriate word. Like, it just didn't fit. Like, it seems too innocent because it just wasn't. So anyway, so that's how Wesley Jr. grew up. Loren now is a different story. So on the other hand, you have Loren. His dad was also in construction, but he was more of a laborer, like the contractor that came out and did the work rather than the business owner. So he's not as high on the income scale, but they still lived in the same neighborhood across the street. Loren's dad would later say he never liked Wesley, but you let him play with your kid anyway. You'll let them play with them anyway. So I don't know. And I know this is something that I'm sure a lot of parents deal with. I know we have, like there's just one kid that's about the same age that lives nearby for your kid to play with, and you aren't 100% sure you want them around your kid, but you don't want your kid bored and lonely and sad. And
I hope your neighbors aren't listening to us.
So you feel bad for your kid, and you hope that your kid maybe is the better influence and the bigger influence, or that you see maybe that this isn't or that they see that this isn't the best friend for them. Like maybe this isn't a friend that they want to have, or maybe they learn to set their own boundaries and just, to have this different relationship. But it's tough. So I get it. But Loren was definitely the mild salsa to Wesley's spicy salsa, if you know what I mean. Like they were just very different, very oil and water, but it still worked as a friendship. But, because they each had a boy their own age on the street to play with, and there weren't that many. And they both loved the outdoors. So that was their like initial bond. They were very young. So Wesley's dad spoiled Wesley with all this stuff, including guns, and taught him how to hunt and how to fish. And so Wesley's family would go off camping, hunting, fishing, and they would always take Loren. So Loren was always with them on all of these trips. It was like they had another son. And so he was taught how to hunt and fish just like Wesley Jr. And this is how the two grew up. They were inseparable. Wesley was the loud troublemaker. Loren was the quiet follower. And I bet that Wesley's ego was stroked by having a friend like Loren around who'd go along with anything, who kind of did just whatever you told him to do. But it also probably helped Loren to have a friend who was like Wesley, to give him a sense of safety, probably. Like, well, at least I'm friends with the bully and I'm not being bullied. Yeah. Right. And
like, who's going to mess with you when he's like your best friend?
Right. And so he gave you safety and stature. Yeah. Because, man, no one's going to, they're well known, they have money, and no one's going to mess with them. And so you're basically attached to that family and that safety. So it probably, I wonder who will actually remember these names, but Wesley was the Scut Farkas to Loren being Grover Dill from A Christmas Story. Do you remember? Do you remember A Christmas Story?
I mean, I remember Christmas Story, but I've only watched it.
Scut Farkas was the redheaded bad kid, and then like the little one was Grover Dill. Yeah, the little one. It was like, so they were just.
Yeah, I know the characters. I just don't know their names.
Yeah,
like
so one was like the real mean one. The other one was just kind of like, So anyway, so these two spent so much time outdoors. They explored every nook and cranny in the area, and it turns out to be a perfect setup for their future of murder and sexual assault. So great. So by the time these two adventure seekers got into junior high and high school, those outdoorsy kind of activities were getting boring. So again, this was a small town with not a lot to do, which is just a perfect recipe for drug use and things like that. So first it was just drinking and smoking pot. And as they got older, it turned to meth, or crank, is what it was called in the 80s, early 80s. And they were bored. So it was just a little bit here, a little bit there. But it wasn't just a problem that these two had. It was a very popular drug during this time. It was usually called like a rural drug because manufacturing it and usage were way more popular in the rural areas. Because you could get everything you needed to get really easily without having to go into the big city to get something. So if you're in the middle of nowhere, got nothing to do, might as well get high. And that's what people did. And a lot of them used it like they'd go to work, do manual labor jobs because that's a lot of what was out there. And then you wanted to be able to go out and party at night. So they would do meth and go to the bars. They went to the Linden Inn a lot. That was one of the more popular bars. And then they'd have energy to party for the rest of the night. And then they would go back to school or go back to work. That was just a normal, everyday kind of a thing. So the two later realized that if they sold it, then they would have even more stature and be more needed in the community, and that worked. So if you wanted stature, you sold drugs, and they figured that out. So they were also, though, getting high on their own supply.
Oh, that's breaking rule number 1, man.
And as we learned a couple of weeks ago, methamphetamine changes how your brain works. So, it can decrease your ability to feel empathy. It can make you more destructive. It can cause paranoia, anxiety, violent behavior, hallucinations, all a great combination for these two dudes. So by 1984, the two were using meth so much that they felt untouchable at this point. They were the peak of their existence. They were 18 in 1984. Just to kind of put everything back into a timeline, they were 18. They were regulars at a local bar called Linden Inn, like I said, and they were known by everyone. So there was more than one bar in a town that small, but there was more than one bar. So they went to the other bars as well to sell their goods, but they really were at the Linden Inn a lot. It had a karaoke machine that people used all the time, so it was like everyone kind of went there. It wasn't just a hole in the wall. It was like parents hung out there with their kids, like older kids, so that they could sing karaoke and stuff. The guy that owned it was Mr. Vanderheiden, and he comes into the story a little bit later. But I'll come back to him. So they made a lot of money selling their meth to the locals. They were known by everybody. They were also known by everybody for being troublemakers. And again, they were always together, but it was always Wesley doing the troublemaking and Loren being sort of the calmer, cooler, Yeah. He was tall and handsome, and Wesley was a little bit darker, a little bit shorter, and just rougher around the edges, just very, very full of himself. Okay, so, and yes, they were still hunting, like boom, boom, bang, bang, hunting animals. But their hunting trips started to not be enough for them. It wasn't exciting enough. Naturally. I mean, let's get into some real sports. So I'm going to tell you first just about the murders that the two were convicted of, and then I'll at the end give you more of the updates. So in September of 1984, they headed north towards the Sierra Nevada mountains, about an hour from Linden, between Lake Tahoe and Linden, if you're looking at a map, when they saw a car parked on the side of the road with a man inside. So they stopped, and Wesley, kind of feigning interest in if the guy was okay, knocks on the window, and he's like, "Hey man, are you okay?" Inside was a man named Henry Howell. He was a 41 Santa Clara resident. What they think is that he was most likely stopped to sleep off some heavy drinking so that he wouldn't keep driving drunk. And so he was like, like kind of just sort of woke up.
What an awesome town.
What?
No, I'm just saying, like, drunks on the side of the road, sleeping.
Yeah. I mean,
I was looking up their pictures.
Oh, yeah.
In case you're wondering what I'm doing on my phone.
Yeah, that's okay. I figured you were looking them up. So he was a little bit slow to wake up. So Wesley Shermantine shot him and killed him. Just bam.
Just because he was slow to wake up?
No, he was just like, they wanted to kill somebody.
Oh, okay. I thought you just meant because they were.
He did it. He just wanted to kill somebody. So they took his money. He had $11. Okay. And then they left. The local sheriff's department didn't have any leads, so the case went cold pretty quickly. We also know that since he was an Indigenous American, the murders of those, we know more about the women who go missing and are killed. They don't get investigated quite as thoroughly or as quickly, or they're not as important. It's even worse for Indigenous men. So it's especially horrendous. In 1984, it was probably way, 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 way worse.
Yeah.
There's a lot of evidence of that, unfortunately. So that case went cold right away. Anyway, so now that they've got one murder under their belt, they went back to normal life. They got a little high and, they're like, ooh, we did it. So, they went back to working, getting high, going to bars, selling meth, repeat. And so these two actually after high school had gotten an apartment together. So they were living together, they were working, doing the same thing every single day. But now that they had a taste of that high that a murder could bring, they wanted more. And so that happened in September of 84. And so on November 27th, 1984, they went on another one of their hunting trips. I'm using my air quotes here. They headed about 30 minutes west on a deserted road near a military base near Roberts Island. The balls on these two. Am I right? A military base. What? Crazy. Anyway, so a car was stopped along the road and they saw two men inside. Now, it's never clear why these two men were stopped along the side of the road, but inside were 35-year-old Howard King and 31-year-old Paul Kavanaugh. The men stayed in the car and Shermantine shot Howard King in the face. And it's not clear as to who shot Paul Kavanaugh, but he was shot over and over again. So he was just riddled with bullets. And then they pulled them both out of the car, went through their pockets. So when the cops showed up, their pockets were inside out, and stole whatever money they had. Herzog would say later it was about $45 that they stole from those two. So big time.
Yeah.
What a waste. Anyway, so then they bolted out of there. But around 11:45 p.m., after the murders had just taken place, this is at nighttime, this happens, Letitia Larkin was unknowingly driving toward a murder scene. And she didn't think much of this red truck with its lights on that was backed up into the field. She didn't think much of it. That is until it pulled out and started to follow her. She felt like maybe she was being paranoid, and so she sped up. And then the truck sped up to match her speed. She obviously was freaking out, and so as she's just sort of gunning it, she takes a quick left. She's trying to lose the truck. She takes a quick left, but it also turns left. She's scared for her life. So she's like pedal to the metal. She's going as fast as she can. She finally makes it home. She pulls into her driveway. She gets out of the car, runs inside of her house, double locks it, runs upstairs, and then looks out the window and she sees the red truck sort of like by her house across the street and just sits there. She says it felt like hours, could have been hours. And then it eventually left, and it's middle of the night at this point, and she's so exhausted. She's like, I'll call the police in the morning. So she gets up in the morning and she's, regular morning. She knows she's going to call the police about what happened, but she's not doing it like right at that moment. But at early that morning, Richard Sahar, a water treatment plant manager, he was driving his car to work, and he always had his first little I guess they call it rounds to check the water treatment plant. Mm-hmm. He did that before sunrise in the morning. And so when he was driving to work, he saw a white car on the side of the road with both of its doors open. So he pulled over to check to see what was happening when he saw this bloody crime scene, right? So he calls in the police, and it ends up on the news. And when Letitia sees that it's on the news, she immediately calls the police and comes forward with her story of the car chase the night before. She knew she was chased by the people who did that.
I am honestly surprised they didn't try to get into her house and kill her.
Me too. Me too. Or after.
Yeah.
Right? So the police came to her house. They took tire imprints. They matched those found at the crime scene. But all she could tell them was that it was a red truck. That's all she could tell them. She couldn't even tell them there were 2 men inside of it. She didn't even know. She didn't know anything about it. She couldn't tell them what kind of truck it was. All she could say was red.
Yeah.
That's it.
Don't blame her at all.
But it was something.
Yeah.
But it was something. She was driving like a bat out of hell.
Yeah,
she only
that's what I'm
got to see
saying.
for like a second.
I don't blame her. Like, I just be trying to get rid of them too.
No leads came in after that, so the trail went cold on this one too. Meanwhile, Shermantine is actually watching the news, and he's like wondering, is she going to come forward? Is she going to say, you know, what did she see? Did she see anything? Maybe she didn't see anything. And so he's kind of like, they're feeling a little bit unsure, but also we got away with it. That's another one they got away with, right? He gets himself an alibi. He talks to his girlfriend's mom, so like his mother-in-law basically, and he says like, this is what happened last night. We were driving by, we drove up onto a crime scene, and another car came driving up, and we got freaked out and we left, and we probably should have called the police, but we didn't know what to do. And she was like, oh yeah, you should have done that. So she totally believed him. And anyway, so this is December of 1984. They're 18. They've killed 3 people already.
Okay.
There's no sign of stopping at this point, right? There's just no sign of stopping. They're 18, y'all. 18. So they were feeling anxious about the woman, but the police didn't even have them in their sights. They were not in the crosshairs at all. So they were totally fine. But I mean, meth.
Yeah.
You know, they're anxious. They're paranoid. So on October 16th, 1985. So I'm only going to tell you about the ones that we know for sure. Thank you, Motorcycle Man. Damn it. So yes, there's a big gap between December 85 and October of 86. Chances are that there's some more, but these are just the ones we know that I'm going to start with. Okay. So October 16th, 1985, Chevelle Yvonne, or Chevy, as she was known, named after her dad's favorite car, Wheeler, 16, skipped school on Wednesday, October 16th, 1985, and was last seen getting into a red pickup truck outside of Franklin High School in Stockton. She had told a friend that she was going to meet, going with a male acquaintance named Wes to Valley Springs, California. She asked her friend to tell her father about what she had done if she didn't return to school by the end of the school day because she appeared hesitant about making the trip. No one else wanted to go with her. And
wow. So she kind of knew, like, it's almost like she knew she wasn't going to come back. Why would you still go?
Oh,
I know. Rich money, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure they were smooth talkers at the time too. Like the guys.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm not blaming her for going. I'm just saying that sucks that she already had that gut feeling and then she went anyways.
So the friend did inform her father when Chevy didn't show up, and her father then called the police. Shermantine was instantly identified by authorities as a prime suspect since he was familiar with the Wheeler family. He was found to be the owner of the red pickup truck. Blood and hair samples taken from a cabin Shermantine owned in San Andreas also matched Wheeler later. They would be able to match it to Wheeler. This motherfucker was so bold. He was like, next day shows up to Wheeler's house. It was like, hey, you were looking for me? And they're like, yeah, where's our daughter? And he was like, what are you talking about? I didn't see your daughter. And there's nothing that they could do. He just was calm, cool, and collected about it.
Ballsy.
That's so ballsy.
Fucked up.
100%. But when you are that narcissistic and crazy, like, you're just, what's up? Can't prove anything.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't see her. Anyway, so 13 years later again, huge gap. November 13th, 1998, the Linden Inn made headlines when Cindy Vander Heiden, the daughter of the Linden Inn owner. So sad. Went missing. And Vander Heiden was 25 at the time. She was seen at the Linden Inn and the Old Corner Saloon with a date. And she had seen Loren and Wesley at the bar, and they were like, hey, ditch the zero and get with the hero, right? They were like, ditch that guy, come party with us. Cindy, at this point, she's 25. She had just started getting her life back on track. She was a partier and then started to get her life back on track. She just paid for a new car all by herself. And so that was like really important to her. And the thought of maybe partying again was a really very tempting proposition. And so her date dropped her off, and she took her car and went to go meet Loren and Wesley at a nearby cemetery to smoke meth. That was the idea, is that she was going to go there to smoke meth. The next morning, her dad, she had actually asked her dad to go with her to go karaoke, and he was like, no, honey, we're just too tired. We don't want to go. So she went out with this guy that was kind of sweet on her. And then that whole thing happened. And how bad do you feel if that was your kid?
Yeah. Can't imagine.
So he gets up and sees that she's not at home. So he was like, okay, great. So she came late, left early to go to work. Fantastic. So he gets up, he gets ready for work. And as he's driving, he drives by the cemetery and he sees her car. So he's like, that's weird. So he drives into the cemetery, pulls up next to her car. Car's unlocked. Her purse and everything is in there, unlocked. And he's like, that's not good. So immediately there's a missing person report that goes off. It would be over a decade before her case was solved.
I have to say, at least he didn't see her body. I feel like I don't know that I would be able to handle that.
Oh gosh. He never gave up. He said that he would keep the porch light on, and he still keeps it on.
Oh my God.
He said, I would keep it on for her so she could find her way home. She may not need it, but maybe there's somebody else who's lost who might need that, need to find home. So he keeps the porch light on. Whew. So, as the San Joaquin Sheriff's Department worked to find Vander Heiden, Sherman's car was repossessed in 1999, and it was investigated after blood was found inside. Blood that was later determined to be Vander Heiden's. They were not able to do this in the 80s, right? Yeah. And so it was lucky that they were able to do this in the 90s. Investigators then focused their attention on Loren Herzog. They were like, we've got to get him to crack, because Shermantine was like, I need a lawyer. I'm not talking without a lawyer.
Yeah.
And so right away, Herzog was a little bit easier to crack. So there's a lot of interrogation video of Loren Herzog, and I don't have time to play it tonight as much as I would love to. You can watch, I put all of the links in the show notes, but you can see that there was really, they were really counting on his seemingly calmer, probably just a follower of Wesley. They knew he was involved, but they were kind of playing up the, he's gonna rat you out. He's talking about you. It's always Wesley and Loren. It's always the two of you. It's never just Wesley. He's always putting you in his story. And so they were kind of using that a bit. It wasn't easy, but he did start to talk a little. Was he always honest? No. Nope. And the Foul Play podcast has this whole episode on just the nonverbal cues of when he was telling a lie. And my gosh, we're all lying all the time, basically. Don't do nonverbal cues on me, because you're going to think I'm lying all the time. So like when he covers his mouth Like he'll answer.
I do that all the time, just out of a bad habit.
So if he answers like, so did you know that he was doing that? No, because your brain is wanting you to say something different than your mouth is saying.
Yeah.
So your brain is trying to stop you from saying what you're about to say. Or when he puts on his sunglasses, he wants to give himself protection so that they don't see him maybe look scared or upset. Or when he leans with just one shoulder into the interviewer, or when he laughs and he makes light of something or kind of brushes something off, that's a sign of deception. Or when the big ass vein, what's it called? What's that vein?
Jugular?
No, what is it, like the carotid artery or something?
Yeah.
That's the one that pops out. Anyway, it started bulging after one question. You can just see it get bigger and bigger and bigger, like it really becomes pronounced.
I'm gonna be looking at people's necks all the time. They're gonna be like, "What the fuck are you doing?"
You could see him wiping the sweat. Just little things like this, where I'm like, when he leans back and crosses his arms, when he puts his hands in his pocket of his sweatshirt, I'm like, I'd be cold. But or if someone sits on their hands, I do that because my hands get cold. Yeah. All of these things, like it's fascinating. It is fascinating. So just if you're gonna listen to anything like that, was just fascinating. I kept stopping it to talk to Jason about it. Is there a child in there?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So Herzog told investigators that Shermantine had killed a hunter in Utah named Henry Howell in 1994, as well as a 24-year-old woman named Robin Armtrout. So someone not even on their radar. He also said he was in a vehicle when Shermantine killed Vander Heiden, but did not actively participate in the killings. Loren Herzog and Wesley Shermantine were charged with several counts of murder in 1999. In 2001, Shermantine was convicted of the murders of Cindy Vander Heiden, Chevy Wheeler, and the 1984 murders of Howard King and Paul Kavanaugh. Herzog was convicted for the murders of Vander Heiden, Kavanaugh, and King. Wesley Shermantine was given the death penalty and sent to death row at San Quentin State Penitentiary. Loren Herzog was given 78 years, but his convictions were overturned in 2004 after an appeal was granted showing his confessions were coerced. He asked for a lawyer, basically, and he never got one. They kept going. Oh, my God. He said, I don't, like, this is all on tape. Yeah. They said, we're going to read you your rights. You have the right to remain silent. And then he was like, do you understand that? And he said, no. He's like, right now, you have the right to not talk to me. And so line by line, he had to explain what his Miranda rights, what that meant.
Right.
And he would say, do you understand? No, but okay. Like you could tell, like, he's just like, whatever. All right. And then he kept saying, well, do I have to talk? No. Okay. I don't want to talk. He kept saying, I don't want to talk. I don't want to talk. I don't want to talk. I think I need a lawyer. You said I had to ask for a lawyer. And he was like, yeah, well, you're not going to get one till Monday. So you might as well talk. So they were just,
insistent. Yeah.
They didn't do it right.
Yeah.
They didn't do it right. If he said, I need a lawyer, they should have stopped.
And which one was this one?
Herzog. The quiet one.
Okay.
The one that eventually gave everybody up. So his sentence was reduced to 14 years with 6 already having been served. So he was released, kind of. Nobody wanted him. No county wanted him. No city wanted him. Yeah. So he ended up, he wasn't wanted anywhere, right? So he lived in a trailer on the prison grounds. And he couldn't work because he couldn't go farther than like 100 feet or 200 feet from the trailer. He had an ankle bracelet, the whole thing. Anyone that he had visit had to be checked in and checked out. So it was still very like, you're in the shadow of the prison, literally like in the shadow of the prison. But you're in this like trailer.
I've never heard of that.
I know, because nobody wanted him. They can't make you go somewhere if nobody wants you. Because they have to be responsible for you, right?
Yeah, it's just I've never heard of someone like not being in prison, but then living on the prison grounds.
Yeah, I don't know how common that is. That's weird. But he wasn't in prison.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I mean,
it's
you're
so
still
bizarre.
like, you're still out.
Yeah.
You're by yourself. You're very lonely at this point, but you're not in prison anymore. So, that just pissed Wesley off. Boy, did that piss Wesley off. Because Wesley didn't talk. There's no statement that the police had, but to be fair, they couldn't use anything that Loren said against Wesley. Oh. So it really was the blood in the cabin, the blood in the car, that kind of thing. So it was really, on evidence. They couldn't use what Loren had said, but he said it. Yeah. And that pissed Wesley off. So he decided, well, shit, this guy just got let out. I'm sitting here on death row. I'm going to die. So I'm going to start talking. So he was like, look, I'll tell you where the bodies are if you give me $33,000. And people were like, yeah, fuck you. And so Leonard Padilla, the bounty hunter, was like, okay.
But why would he want money if he's on death row?
First kids.
Oh, okay. I mean, that's kind of noble.
They were both married and had children.
Oh.
Yeah. We don't know much about those people.
Yeah. That's kind of semi-noble of him to want money for his children, but it's still fucked up how he was trying to get it. Anyway, go on. I'm sorry.
I don't feel sorry for him. Okay.
I don't feel sorry for his kids.
Yeah. But I'm sorry for him. Yeah. Anyway, so Padilla and Rob Dick were like, they got a lot of shit from the families for saying okay. I don't even know if they even ended up giving him the money, but they said okay, and that just pissed off the families like you wouldn't believe. But they were like, we have all these cold cases. We are trying to find these people.
Yeah.
If he can give us something, wouldn't that be worth it?
Yeah, closure for other families.
Well, they would all say, what would you give to find out where your daughter is? And they would say like, anything.
Yeah.
I'd win the lottery and give you the winnings, like anything. There's no amount of money I wouldn't give you to find out where they were.
Yeah.
So that's what they did. You know what I mean? So like that in that was their argument. But they were just pissed off about it. I understand that too. So he told the bounty hunters, he said, listen, I'll tell you where they are. You give, and I think the way that it goes, like if you give, he said, give me $30,000 and I'll tell you. He was only going to get 15 of that. The other 15 was going to go back to the prison.
Okay.
Like he was only going to get 50%. Like if someone sent him $1, if a fan sent him $1, he's only going to get 50 cents of that.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody knows that, but that's how the California prison system works. Weird. Anyway. Yeah. So he was pissed off. He's like, I get $1. I get only 50 cents of that $1 if someone sends him money for the commissary. Right.
Yeah.
So he was like, look, I 15,000 for my kids. So that's kind of how he saw it. Anyway. So he started to draw these like super rudimentary maps, right? Like, this is a driveway. Here's a tree. It's here 6 feet from the tree. And it's like, oh, it's been 20 plus years now. And that isn't what it looks like anymore. And there was like a big fire through this area too.
Oh man.
There's a huge fire near Wesley's house. Wesley's house was the one that didn't burn. So, that property wasn't burned. So they were still able to go. And sure enough, they were able to find Chevy Wheeler and Cindy Vanderheim on his property. They were able to find them. But he would also tell them about where they could find more bodies in what he dubbed Loren's Boneyard. And also 2 wells. One that had 10 to 12 bodies in it and one that had like 25 bodies in it. And
he confirmed bodies in it? Or he was just saying?
This is what he was saying.
Oh, okay.
But they did start a dig and I heard it said dinosaurs were treated better than the remains of these people. They used a backhoe to dig up this area, not like just the top layer and then slowly work their way down. Like backhoe, huge chunks of dirt with like remains falling out of it. So remains were mixed up together. There wasn't like whatever. They found lots of bodies, including a fetus, but like lots of little bones and fragments and stuff. And it was just a fucking mess. So Wesley told Padilla that Loren was also responsible for a 9-year-old missing girl named Michaela Garrick from Hayward. When Padilla got word to Loren, so he's like, listen, Wesley is talking lots of shit now. He's given up your boneyard. He's given up the location of all these wells. He, or trying. They weren't all, the maps were not great. But they started to have to do the sort of like really investigate. It's all just land out there. Yeah. Right. So just not great drawings. So it was very hard to get anything, but they were able to find some bodies. So anyway, so Padilla told Loren that Wesley was telling all these stories, drawing maps, remains were being found. They did find bodies. And he hyperventilated when I told him, Padilla said. He knew he would also end up on death row. And that day, he hung himself.
Oh, my God.
He was hoping that he would talk, but he hung himself. Eventually, another man was found guilty by DNA evidence of Michaela's murder when she was found. He did look an awful, like the composite sketch did not bode well for Loren. Like that was 100%. Like, oof, they looked a lot alike. Yeah. Like long blonde, brownish blondish hair, same kind of scowl.
It's weird.
It's so crazy.
How different Loren and Wesley look. Like when I was looking at their
like
pictures,
Abbott and Costello.
They look so different.
Like Loren, you can see that he was the smooth talker. Yeah. He was the guy that was like, hey, you want to go hang out? And the girls were like, okay. And then Wesley would be there like, just, terrible. So, anyway, this guy was found guilty. And so Michaela's death was definitely linked to Loren and Wesley for some time. But, I think the idea of the total amount of death that Loren was going to be blamed, like be accused of and sent to death row for and back to jail. Like he did not want to go back to jail. Yeah. And so he took the coward's way out, but he knew it was all going to come out eventually. And so Wesley just kept talking. So now all we have are Wesley's stories, and you kind of have to take all of it with a grain of salt. You got to kind of take both of their stories. They each say that the other one is the crazier one. But you don't know what Loren would have said to all of this.
Yeah. I mean, he obviously felt guilty enough to end his own life. He didn't think he was going to be found innocent. So
yeah, he did not think he would be found innocent. So the FBI actually took over the case after local authorities' poor handling of the dig. There's actually, that was a huge, huge issue, and sent the remains for DNA testing. On March 30th, 2012, they announced the identities of 2 people found in a well, Kimberly Ann Billy and Joanne Hobson, who disappeared in 1984 and 1985, respectively. Shermantine identified 2 other burial sites on property once owned by his family, where Chevy Wheeler and Cindy Vanderheiden were found. So here's what happens since Loren's suicide. So this comes from Wikipedia, and I just kind of had to put them in kind of order. So the total number of victims of Herzog and Shermantine remains unknown and totally 100% speculative, right? Both were convicted in the murders of 4 people and are believed to be responsible of the deaths of at least 19 others. Both men targeted random victims and killed for fun and sport. They would go hunting, shooting individuals to death, and in some cases, kidnapping women, raping them, and stabbing them to death. Afterwards, in Calaveras County, they would dispose of their bodies in mine shafts, isolated hillsides, and beneath trailer parks. Prior to his arrest, Shermantine frequently told relatives and acquaintances that he, quote, made people disappear around the outskirts of Stockton. In a confrontation with one woman he tried to rape in a trailer park and was acquitted for. Shermantine allegedly told her after he had pushed her head to the ground, quote, listen to the heartbeats of people I've buried here. Listen to the heartbeats of families I've buried here.
What a psychopath.
Shermantine stated that there could have been up to 72 victims in a statement he sent to local Sacramento news station in March of 2012. Yet he asserted that he would withhold the information unless Padilla gave him the $33,000 he demanded. I really want to believe Leonard, but I have these doubts he'll come through, which is a shame because I've been holding the best for last. Ugh. Shermantine wrote that. That's just gross.
Oh.
The following is a list of their known victims and several other missing people who have been mentioned as possible victims. So I left out the ones I've already said. So I'm going to skip like Chevy and Cindy. I'm going to skip those. So 16-year-old Ruth Ann Lehman disappeared from Modesto, California in 1982. So this would have made them 16 at this time. After she became acquainted with two men, both in their 30s, on August 19th. 3 blocks from her house at Theresa Street and Carver Road was where Lehman decided to meet the men later that evening. She left her Clayton Avenue apartment that day about 8:45 p.m. and was last seen leaving. She said she was traveling on foot to Sam's Food City to get a soda, but in reality, Ruth did show up at the shop. She quickly left. Ruth was never seen again. The 2 men who were supposed to meet Ruth that night she disappeared were questioned by authorities, but both of them denied any involvement in her case. Herzog and Shermantine are thought to be suspects. Ruth and a female acquaintance traveled to the Calaveras County Frog Jump with Herzog before she vanished. So, Kimberly Ann Billy, who you heard about, she was 19 when she disappeared from Stockton. She was one of the ones that were found along with the pregnant woman. She disappeared from Stockton on December 11th, 1984. There's 16-year-old Joanne Hobson. She disappeared from Stockton on August 29th, 1985. In February of 2012, acting on Shermantine's directions, that's when authorities found over 300 human bones and some personal items left in an abandoned well in Linden. And Billy's bones were in the well as those Hobson's, which I mentioned earlier. On September 8th, 1985, Herzog and Shermantine met Roberta Ray Robin, she went by Robin Jones Armtrout, 24, at a park in Stockton. They were supposed to go out drinking together, but instead they headed to a farm close to Linden, not far away from where both of the men lived. Shermantine got carried away at some point and started raping and beating Armtrout. After stabbing her more than a dozen times, he dumped her naked body on the bank of Potter Creek. So they noticed that most of the stab wounds were in her back and in her chest regions. When a dove hunter subsequently discovered her naked body, her mother last saw her getting into a red pickup truck with 2 men. Her family was able to identify her based on she was self-mutilating, and she was carving words into her own body. And so she was doing that on her abdomen and on her arm. And I think it was, I don't know that, I can't remember, and I'm sorry I don't remember, but it was something like worthless or something like that. Like she wrote that on herself, and her sister saw it and was worried about her. And then she ended up going out with these 2 guys, and that was it. But she was not in a good place at that time. And so doing drugs wasn't out. Susan Robin Bender, 15, left her family's home in Modesto on April 25th, 1986 to stay with friends in Carmel, California. She was last observed making a phone call at a former Greyhound bus depot on 10th Street and G Street in Modesto. Susan was seen entering a full-sized olive green 1977 Ford van outside of the station. Susan has never been seen again. Authorities investigated Herzog and Shermantine as possible suspects in 2012, but were unable to find a link. Foul play is suspected in her case. On June 3rd, 1986, 31-year-old Sylvia Lourdes Stanley disappeared from Modesto. She was released from the county women's facility in Oakdale Road that day and then called her family and said she would get a ride home. She was last seen getting into a blue or green truck. Her case remains unsolved. Gail Mary Marks, 18, accompanied her mother to the San Joaquin County Mental Health Department in Stockton on October 18th, 1988. Marks then walked alone to the local DMV on Park Street to get an ID card. She made it to the DMV because a few days later, her card was mailed to her address. After leaving the DMV, Marks contacted her mother and left a message. She was never heard from again. Herzog and Shermantine were investigated in 2012. 47-year-old Philip Cabot Lloyd Martin was a transient who was last seen in North Stockton on September 30th, 1993. On that day, he forgot to pick up his daughters from school, and no one has seen or heard from him since. He also had issues with meth. He was homeless, but he was always there. It was this really weird, very strange relationship with his family. He lived in a hotel. He just wouldn't do that. If he was going to be there for the kids, he was there for the kids.
Yeah.
Yes, he had problems with drugs. Yes, he was homeless, but he still managed to show up for the kids. Show up for his adult children who also had grandchildren. Martin's daughter told authorities that her father had worked with Shermantine and that as a young girl, she had chosen him from a lineup of pictures. So when that happened, yeah. So his daughter said she believed Martin, Shermantine, and Herzog used drugs together. His case is still unsolved. Tracy Diane Melton, 32, disappeared from Stockton on May 6, 1998. A bone fragment located in Linden in 2003 was identified as hers in April 2011, but her family was not notified until 2012. Evidence pointed to Shermantine and Herzog as suspects. Elected officials and families of victims and those believed to be victims of the Speed Freak killers alleged that the sheriff's department deliberately used a backhoe to hide evidence at the first burial site, knowing the damage it could do to the evidence. State Senator Kathleen Galgiani, probably butchered your name, I'm sorry, suggested that missing persons records of people possibly connected to Herzog and Shermantine were deleted. Later, it was determined emails had been sent to have them removed from the National Missing Persons List. In 2018, the investigation of the Speed Freak killers cases were reopened. Since then, over 1,000 human remains have been found, and the mishandling of the case has gone to federal courts. So that's good. Investigators continue to work to identify the remains and bring some sense of peace to the families. And they've been waiting decades for answers. Some of them are just hoping that Shermantine actually does come forward with the locations of some of their family members. So yeah, the total number is not known, anywhere from 20 to over 100. Serial killers don't normally just stop after a few and then take a decade-long break, especially if they're still in the same town doing the same drugs and still not growing up. Yeah. But it all remains to be seen. So Loren Herzog died in 2012 due to, hanging himself, and Wesley Shermantine remains on death row. He has not been killed yet. But they're hoping that more information does come out. And that is my story.
Oh, wow. Well, all right.
There you go. That was a wild ride. There's so, and I left out so much. I really
feel like
wanted,
leaving out the fact that they were married and had children was pretty wild.
There's not a whole lot known about them.
I know.
Yeah, there's just not a whole lot.
Surprised that they were married, I guess, with children. But anyways.
Yeah, because there's two different sides to them, right?
Yeah.
So Shermantine's wife, though, or like his girlfriend back in the day, I don't know if it ended up being her wife. Her name was Sugar. I can't imagine. Like, I just can't imagine like hearing all of these things about what your partner did, what your husband did. Like, he was bad, but did you know he was that bad?
Right.
The raping and the stabbing and all of those things. Like, God damn that guy. Really?
It's like he just knows.
I hate that sounds so much. Anyway, so I bet no one at home can even hear it. Anyway, but they were really just one person at home. They were like a dad, father, a husband. Maybe they were just shitty all around people. Yeah. But when Lauren's wife showed up into the interrogation room, they hugged for a long time, and that's all in video. You can see it. I just can't even imagine.
Yeah.
Can't imagine what that must have been like.
Well, my story next week is fun.
Good.
It's fun. Like the wizard suggested, we have a fun story. It's fun.
He was like, just keep going. And I'm like, Anderson is right here. He cannot hear my story. He's like, maybe you should just tell a happy story, fun story next time.
Okay. Well, there's going to be one.
Okay.
It includes all kinds of things. I'm going to try to fit it into one part. It might end up being 2 parts. It's like a TV series that I just happened to come across, and it's fascinating. And it's got paranormal. It's got urban legends. It's got disappearances. It's got
Bigfoot?
Murder. Bigfoot's relatives.
Whoa, there's relatives?
Yes.
Wow.
And all kinds of things that you may have heard of before, but you have
butts?
no idea where they came from, or the fact that there's real evidence of
what
some
is
of
the
these
relative of Bigfoot?
Bigfoot. There's one that's literally just called the Hairy Man, and they say that he is from the line of Bigfoot. But there's another one, and I can't remember the name.
So he's like a regular sized man? Well, like regular sized feet?
No, he's like the size as Bigfoot.
Oh, like still.
But it's going to be a fun story.
Okay.
It'll be a fun story. There's
so
lots
many questions.
You'll have tons of questions after you hear it. But yeah, it's a happy-go-lucky. Your kids can probably listen to it. It's up to you. I'm not going to give parental advice, but
nope.
But it's not a crazy, bloody, gory story next week. It's going to be fun. That's going to be. That's good. I don't think any children were harmed in any of the stories that I'll be talking about.
No children.
I don't want to say too much because I don't want people to look it up before I talk about it.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a good time. We're gonna love it. Everyone's going to love it.
Everyone better love it.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Well, until next week, see something, say something. If someone's following you,
go to the police department.
Go to the police department. If your cell phone isn't working, oh my gosh, there's so many things.
If you're having any kind of issues, you can always reach out to us. Mental health, domestic abuse, whatever the situation is, we will help you get the help.
We got you. Okay, so until next week, take care. We'll see you then.
Bye.